Illustration art. It's all about us. It's about everything. Finalizing the title for this project was a last step in the process. After selecting almost 600 images from several thousand examined, it was clear illustration is about us, and its scope does address everything. The image you're looking at, I encountered early in the process, and I sensed it would resonate with me as time went on. It was published in 1951 and illustrates a tired, worn-out art director looking at one more illustration. You will hear the term illustrator and the term fine artist or easel painter. Neither are terms implying quality or skill. Both are artists. Illustration work is by commission, usually a publisher or advertising agency, and intended for reproduction and to communicate a narrative or a single thing. It's a collaborative effort. The illustrator must respond to the art director and client. The fine artist is independent, paints what he or she wants, free of the directions from others. The illustrator is paid by the client. The fine artist has to sell his work through a gallery, auction house, or direct sales. For his freedom, income is usually less steady, less reliable. When the aspiring young artist is in art school, if pursuing a fine arts direction, he's often told, paint what you know. It will be more authentic and more inspired. The young artist pursuing illustration will hear, paint what you don't know but can imagine. I feel that's the biggest difference between the two. Many forms of creating art with the objective of relating a narrative or story have existed literally since the days of the caveman. This brief timeline begins in the early 1860s, when sufficient number of trained illustrative artists existed, along with magazines, journals, newspapers, and other publications, and cost-affordable printing methods for black and white reproduction, and of course, mass distribution to introduce a better and widespread means of communication. Illustration timeline. 1860s. The tragedy of the Civil War dominated news and communication, with names like Winslow Homer, Thomas Nast, and Edwin Forbes achieving notoriety. 1870s and early 1880s. The post-Civil War years saw the growth of print media and publishers realizing the necessity to build bullpens of talented illustrators to capture the leading stories of the day. Considered the father of illustration, Howard Pyle opened the first school devoted to teaching illustration skills. Late 1880s and 1890s. The 1880s and 1890s saw the rapid increase in the number of trained illustrators like Frederick Remington, Charles Dana Gibson, Edwin Austin Abbey, Harvey Dunn, etc. Increased print media and improved printing with half-tone capability, and the development of newspaper artist reporters, especially in city papers, provided growing employment opportunities for the illustrator. Early teens. Modernism was increasing in Europe, and only a matter of time before its exposure and influence would reach American shores, with the impact of the 1913 Armory Show and exposure to Marcel Duchamp's Cubist-influenced Nude Descending the Staircase. These events encouraged more experimentation among the illustrators. Mid-teens and 20s. The influence of World War I had on America was initially the doughboys marching off to save the world amid bands, patriotic songs, and waving sweethearts. But as the illustrators' images appeared in various publications, the horrors began to sink in. The excesses of the following jazz age followed, and illustrators grasped onto images that would erase the memories of World War I. The 1930s. The devastating effect of the Depression dragged on almost until World War II. This is an image of a sharecropper family which typified a great deal of illustration during the era. A ray of hope emerged with Roosevelt's New Deal and the WPA program extending resources and support to thousands of artists to create volumes of artwork like this mural you see here in Chicago. 1940s. As always, Norman Rockwell worked to provide some relief for those at home and created a series of amusing magazine covers of the, quote, all-American soldier, Willie Gillis, seen here in the back of a deuce-and-a-half truck being transported with a group of more seasoned troops. But illustrator images like this, Flashlight Surgery, Saipan, were inevitable. The 1950s. The economy was bouncing back, the pent-up demand from the Depression and the restrictions during the war were lifted. More money was flowing into advertising, but businesses were looking very closely at the new medium, TV. Rather than print and photography was replacing original art on magazines. And, of course, there was a nasty war in Korea that was not going according to plan. 1960s and 70s. Major changes were occurring where illustrators were previously active as advertising funds shifted to TV, with very little demand for original artwork. Family magazines were losing readers to special interest publications, and illustrators needed to adjust, often becoming specialists in various niches to remain relevant. Lots of magazines, lots of photography, no original cover art. 1980 to the 2000s. The trend towards special, or to sound kind of slick, segmented or target market focused publications continues, as does technology assisted ways to generate desired images and unique effects. These skills are being taught today. Creative demands exist in film and in music images, and, if you want, even in t-shirts and tattoos. But the illustrator has to adapt, has to be savvy where the opportunities exist. The scope of subjects and styles illustrators have used over the past century and a half begs for a somewhat arbitrary way to categorize the work. We've developed 15 general descriptions, and much of the work does overlap one or more categories. We're going to present just 3 examples from each topic to give you a sense of what you will be seeing in future episodes. We lead off with one of the staples of the illustrator, advertising. As viewers here, we are at a somewhat disadvantage because we don't see the accompanying copy and often the image of the goods presented. Therefore, the visual alone sometimes seems totally unrelated to the subject being advertised. Playing hooky is a wonderful image, clear to the viewer without any copy, for Nabisco brand cream of wheat, appearing in 1912. The kids are ready to go fishing while the irate adult, teacher or maybe mother, is searching for them. Entitled First Night, the narrative is pretty clear as the performer takes a bow, receives a bouquet from an admirer. But what do you think is being advertised? I could not offer a guess. Perhaps the local florist. No. Budweiser beer, 1946. The third example dresses up a normally unexcited range of packaging materials with interesting and abstracted patterns and designs. It communicates technical aspects, industrial components, transportation, and sort of an overall sense of expertise. It's actually pretty slick for 1940. Illustrations were expected to accompany literature, and the best illustrators were in constant demand. At the top of the list was Newell Convers Wyeth, known simply as NC, whose work appears in American classic stories. Among them was The Last of the Mohegans by James Fenimore Cooper, published by Scribner's in 1919. Powerful images like this, when seen by a child, stay with them into adulthood. Among the best of the young people's books, James Gurney's Dinotopia, A Land Apart from Time. This masterpiece of imagination was the initial inspiration to develop the book and its accompanying artwork. Gurney has an advanced degree in anthropology before pursuing the world of science fiction. Normally, a book cover will tell us what it is. This one may or may not be J.D. Salinger's classic. I can't tell. Apparently, according to the cover, a book for bastards, morons, and madmen. Your guess may be better than mine. A special responsibility for the best illustrators is to give us a memorable and lasting image of the past, history, long before any of us were there to witness it. It takes great imagination and diligent research to, quote, get it right. Howard Pyle, another of the great earlier giants, born in 1853, has done that with, quote, Nation Makers, depicting a moment during the Revolutionary War, published in Collier's Magazine in 1906. Not all history is noble or have a happy ending, far from it. After an extended period as a Marine combat artist in the Pacific, participating in 4 of the island-hopping assaults, Jim McDermott pursued illustration and filmmaking. This stylized image captures, well, let's call it one of Chicago's finer moments, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, published in Argosy Magazine in 1958. After the first effort to lay a transatlantic cable from Ireland to Newfoundland failed in 1858, it was successfully completed in 1866. It stretches 2,000 miles and 2 miles deep. It was finally retired in 1978 and replaced by coaxial cable, transistors, and higher bandwidth. The complications and physical difficulties for this project were enormous. Observant illustrators capture the social events and character of their time, sometimes with accuracy, but also an acid wit, perhaps reminding us of our own behavior. Nobody moved the people of his time better than Norman Rockwell. A Post magazine poll of its readers selected Saying Grace as Rockwell's best and most moving cover over his many years contributing to the magazine. This was published in 1956. This image, quote, "Information please," was published over 50 years ago and is valid today. Just change the head to a newer and better piece of technology that will give us even more information that we cannot process or use. The juxtaposition of the smiling family faces, a new car, and the world's highest standard of living, all on a large highway billboard with a 1930s Depression food line patiently standing next to the road sign, carries a powerful but unintended message. The image is truly black and white. The subject of war, ancient or recent, has been staple material for writers and filmmakers, both requiring extensive visual support. Stretcher Bearers is similar to a lot of World War I related illustrations, emphasizing the brutality of trench warfare. Published in Saturday Evening Post. By World War II, a lot of the wartime communication was directed at the home front to encourage preserving needed materials for the war effort. This is a creative call to rideshare and save gas. Look at it carefully. Strangely, I discovered this poster while living in Germany. This is an illustration image from Korea. During the Chinese Army offensive in 1950, generally referred to as the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir. The effort was to drive the 1st Marine Division and other United Nations troops out of North Korea. Although the 10th Army were forced to retreat to South Korea, the 1st Marine Division, in a storied battle, successfully fought their way back to the coast, where ships were waiting for them to evacuate them south. Illustrators often specialize in images of children. There are so many stories and situations where children play a specific role, as well as simply just being included in the composition strictly for interest. I was particularly drawn to this image appearing in 1944, but I saw nothing immediately to reveal either a narrative or even an advertisement. A closer look revealed it was in fact a print ad for Republic Steel. I didn't have any advertising copy to try and determine the connection. I still don't know what it is, other than it's cold, the little boy is carrying something, maybe it's coal, but the connection escapes me. Capturing the innocence of children is a challenge. Few could surpass Jessie Wilcox Smith, as seen in, quote, The First Lesson, published in Ladies' Home Journal in 1904. More of her sensitive and perceptive works of children will be seen in later episodes. Illustrators competed for cover assignments among the family magazines. They were often lighthearted and humorous, but they required an instant comprehension by the viewer without any explanatory text often found within the body of the magazine. Cowboys and Indians does that and is representative of scores of Saturday Evening Post covers. as this collage of magazine covers shows. These were a major source of news, entertainment, and shaping public opinion for the American family pre-television days, and so many other packaged news sources of today. They are all gone now, but magazine covers were an important outlet for great wit, like the unique Maxfield Parrish with the title A Man of Letters, Life magazine, cover 1922. A major publication supporting exceptional cover page illustrations was Saturday Evening Post. With this 1938 cover, appropriately entitled Choir Boys, the boy on the lower right seems to have gotten himself into a slight altercation before church. Few magazine covers invite more hours of careful study than this Post magazine cover entitled simply Gossips. Norman Rockwell had the idea for this piece for 20 years, but he could not determine how to finish it. He finally used an old lady that started the rumor in the upper left corner, tracked the traveling gossip all the way to the end, the lower right corner, then put himself in the last spot, passing the rumor back to her. It is often said Rockwell intentionally put her in there because she was well known as the town gossip. Often the illustrator was called to paint, we'll call them recognized figures, without humor or without parody. This not only needed to be an exceptional likeness, but also captured a mood or the sitter's personality. Few equal Robert Kennedy's likeness in Bantam Books, painted by the exceptional James Bama and published in 1968. PBS, or Public Broadcasting System, sponsored this poster of the wonderfully talented Alec Guinness in character for a recreation of Jean Le Carre's Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy. Although you may not recognize this figure, there are several hints in the composition. A frigid, cold, and icy surrounding, a vintage aircraft on ice landing skis, a three-masted schooner in the distance under the northern lights, a figure appearing to be an assistant taking notes, and the central figure seems to be taking navigational bearings. Well, now, if this were late 1926, you would recognize this world-known Navy aviator, Admiral Richard Byrd, and his crew member, Floyd Bennett, the first to fly over the North Pole in May 1926, and 3 years later flew over the significantly less accessible and known South Pole, the Antarctica. The world of sports also provided a wide variety of subjects for the illustrator, as did the magazine covers love to feature images like this 1934 Collier's image of football in a time of leather helmets and no face masks. Nobody growing up in the era of Mickey Mantle will forget the incomparable Robert Rieger of Sports Illustrated and this simple yet iconic image of the Mick, published in 1957. However, widely accepted as the greatest athlete ever is Bright Path of the Sock and Fox Nation. That's Jim Thorpe, 1887 to 1953. Olympic gold medal winner in 1912 in both the pentathlon and decathlon events. While attending Carlisle Indian School, the famed Pop Warner was his football coach. When his 12-man team played the West Point 50-man team, Pop Warner reminded his players their fathers were killing your fathers. The Indians won this one, beating West Point 27-6. Thorpe scored all the points. Playing for West Point was Dwight Eisenhower. Later in life, Eisenhower said of Jim Thorpe, quote, "He never practiced in his life, and he could do anything better than any other football player I ever saw." Thorpe played professional football, basketball, and baseball 6 seasons for the Giants. The world of entertainment is a virtual playground for the illustrator. It's arguable that this iconic, worldwide recognized poster earned Jaws 3 Academy Awards and nomination for Best Picture of the Year, losing to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It's believed that attendance at beaches dropped precipitously for the next several summers. When a figure can be recognized by silhouette, they've, quote, "made it." But only if the illustrator gets the silhouette right. Hint: this is an image for a record jacket. This is Who's Greatest Hits, Volume 1, 1968. Bob Dylan. A little guy, 5 foot 5 inches, years on vaudeville as a dancer and comedian, earned a reputation as a tough guy, pushing half a grapefruit into a lady's face. The film, Public Enemy. The actor, James Cagney. After a couple of nominations for Best Actor, playing gangsters, he fought with Warner Brothers to get a role displaying his dancing skills. He finally got it in 1942. George M. Cohan in Yankee Doodle Dandy and the Academy Award for Best Actor. Humor is one category that can be found in all the others, but we still wanted to give it a focus. One of the giants of the earlier illustrators was Charles Dana Gibson, born in 1867 and creator of the famous Gibson Girl, which every young lady emulated. His mastery of pen and ink and razor-sharp observation of human behavior is seen in, quote, "An Imitation of the Lady of the House," end quote. Life magazine, 1902. A time when the wealthy had a full staff attending to their every need. Back to magazine cover humor. This 1943 Saturday Evening Post image provided a much-needed diversion from the ravages of the war. Entitled Barbershop, it is instantly understood by the viewer with no need for text. The animated expressions and posture on the two figures sell the humor. Humor does consist of both laugh out loud till your sides ache and the momentary pause, puzzle, then a quiet chuckle to oneself, admitting, that was clever, and maybe you're the only one who gets it. Well, by now, you should have gotten it. Perhaps one of the true illustrator geniuses of the era, Maxfield Parrish, whose work you'll see more of. Maybe Parrish thought of the expression, "It's like watching grass grow," and gave it just a little twist to apply to spring. Politics and politicians have been open season for the illustrators literally since their work appeared in print. Among the earliest was Thomas Nast, born in 1840, a brilliant caricaturist and cartoonist whose stinging images in Harper's Magazine were instrumental in bringing down Boss Tweed and also in securing the election of President Ulysses S. Grant. Considered by many, quote, the Tammany Tiger, end quote, is the most powerful political illustration ever, appearing in Harper's in 1871. Well, updating political observations is this pointed jab in Time magazine in 1974, entitled GOP Elephant During Watergate. It too does not require text to grasp the message. Parody is defined as, quote, an imitation of the style of a particular writer or artist generated with deliberate exaggeration for comic effect. Even our most revered figure in American history cannot escape the wit of parody in both the artist's imagery and the accompanying title. First in war, first in peace, first in the hearts of his country club, appearing in Atlantic Monthly in 1972. Somewhat less direct and described as a, quote, self-promotion piece, this poke at fine art icon is entitled Framing Whistler's Mother, and it appeared in 1975. This is Norman Rockwell's Saturday Evening Post 1939 cover celebrating the 100th anniversary of professional baseball. Even if you're not a fan of baseball, let alone are not aware it's been around 100 years, you'll stop and look at this with a chuckle at the wonderful postures the artist has presented. This piece resides in the National Baseball Hall of Fame and Museum in Cooperstown, New York. We will be highlighting many specific artists and illustrators throughout all the episodes. One of the more innovative with color and illusion was Coles Phillips, who created the, quote, Fade Away Girl. Initially, these works looked simple, but they took great planning in color, value, background, and placement of the figures. This masterpiece, entitled, quote, In a Position to Know Life, end of quote, published 1921, pictures a young domestic girl peeping through a keyhole, learning just a bit more about her employer's behavior. Over the course of this presentation, we will look at a number of artists who started working in illustration but gradually transitioned into easel painters or fine artists. A group known as the Ashcan School will be discussed in detail, but one of their leaders was John Sloan. He was initially a newspaper artist for the Philadelphia Press. He settled in New York in 1905, producing illustrations like this cover piece for Collier's magazine. Gradually, his focus evolved into works like this iconic McSorley's Bar, painted in 1912 and an icon of New York City. Well, this is how McSorley's Bar looks today. Established in 1854, the oldest Irish bar in the city, having served everyone from Abraham Lincoln to John Lennon. Did Sloan's shift in focus benefit his work? His peak auction price today is $3 million. One cannot discuss illustration without a significant portion of the conversation being devoted to the American West. If it weren't for illustrators and easel painters, the image of our heritage would not exist. From the explorer artists like George Catlin and his travels up the Missouri River, the tales of mountain men roaming the Rockies, the genuine cowboy artists who lived what they painted, like Charlie Russell, to the highly trained Eastern artists that established the Taos art colony. They all contributed to the reality and the myth of the West. You'll see throughout the series a steady stream of exceptional illustrators like Robert Lockheed, the designer of the iconic Flying Red Horse for Mobile Oil, convert to a successful Western fine artist like this scene on the 2.2 million acre Bell Ranch in Tucumcari, New Mexico. The sexy female and the world of love and passion filled the magazines and required illustrations to support the reader's imagination. A pretty safe place to start is the world of bathing suits, and this magazine cover illustration in 1933. It's pretty good, but definitely won't satisfy a good portion of the reading or just looking public. This is a classic example appearing in Women's Home Companion. Now, can you think of a better name for a magazine? With the accompanying text, in breathless words, I told her of my dreams, 1940. Pushing the scene a little further, this image accompanies the text, she stepped out of her dress, from a story entitled Date with Death, Saturday Evening Post, 1949. This has been a glimpse at the breadth and scope of what illustrators have given the public. Some examples appear, lend further interpretation to what they accompany, and quickly disappear. Others achieve national recognition, status, and permanence in our memory. Enjoy what's coming next.